Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This is a woman I've known for all of her life and most of mine. She's younger than I am. She was the classmate of my little brother, so I got to see her from probably kindergarten up, grow from one of the cutest, sweetest little girls you ever met into one of the most accomplished, successful, and productive businesswomen, mom. She's been everything from strawberry queen to strawberry chairman or chairwoman. And she's contributed to our community in a ton of ways, including serving as the chairperson of part of the St. Joseph Spring Fair, where she is the president of the Home and School Association. So you probably know by now that we're talking about Leslie Fontenot Settoon. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you doing this. Why don't you kick things off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. You kind of led into it. I'm a lifelong resident of Ponchatoula. I'm a daughter of Roxy and Daryl Fontenot, residents, obviously, of Ponchatoula as well. I have a sister, Kristen, and I married Brett Settoon in 2013, and we have two children, Davis, who is 9, and Flynn, who is 4.
Great. I love your kids. I see Davis all the time, including today at the St. Joe lunch line when I visit my boy Luke. He was able to come sit with us a few weeks ago, and we share mutual friends and Jacob Stogner, and just a great kid. And it's kind of neat to see you raising St. Joseph kids after you and I and our siblings kind of coming up through there. Why don't we start by going back to the days when you were where Davis and Flynn are now as a youngster growing up in this community? What do you remember about the early days of growing up in Ponchatoula?
I think the memories that probably stick out the most are growing up on a one-lane street on One Plaza Drive and having really close friends who were our neighbors, the Devolds and the Aaron Singh boys, and just the simplicity of all of it and the safety of all of it. Going to St. Joseph was very memorable and something really important to me and my husband, to send our children to St. Joseph so that they could get the same Catholic upbringing that I had as a child. The spring fair, which is upon us, it was much different when I was a child. As you probably recall, it was more like a glorified craft fair with a few rides and a couple of singing contests. It was a very nice time to be little.
It was. I remember it was neat. As a guy who lived a block away, I would always relish that my popularity would swell around spring fair time, because mom would probably let us have 2 or 3 kids over to stay the night, and everybody wanted to be near that. So at the time I was probably naive enough to think I was cool. Now I look back and realize, no, I just had a good location. But it was always one of the highlights of the year, whether we were staying at our house or Brendan McMahon's or Wesley Daniels, all the little homes nearby. Do you have any spring fair memories that stick out for you? As you mentioned, it was a smaller setup, a really wholesome event. But what comes to mind? Was it the rides or the events or what?
You practiced really hard for the lip syncing contest. Like, it was a real thing. Like, it was serious. Going with friends when you were old enough to finally walk away from your parents and ride rides on your own. And, when you got a little bit older and boys were playing a factor in your social life, it was a very good time to be on the school grounds when schools closed. There was something really magical about being at school when you weren't supposed to be.
Right. No, that's so true. Well, from the confetti eggs to that later grades experience when you wanted to see the cute girl or boy. That's all part of it. Well, let's dig right into this year's spring fair, because you're super active with that. Am I correct in that you're the sponsorship chair? I'm sorry if I got your title wrong, but
no,
tell us what
you're right.
The spring fair and kind of what we can all expect this year with the event.
So this year's spring fair is a lot of the same of what you've seen before. Some of the nostalgia with the confetti eggs and the homemade games that parents have built. But we have grown so much since I was in school there in the 90s, with incredible bands headlining things like Livewire and Nashville South and Category 6.
Don't forget the cricket farmers. That's they might,
well, you didn't give me a chance. So
I know.
And then we have such incredible local talent.
Right.
And so we get the opportunity to really highlight some of our really great talent like Hallie Reese and the Cricket Farmers, Brandon Perrin and Wesley Watkins. And we're excited to be able to do that. So gone are the days of lip syncing, and now we actually have real talent.
We have real talent, and like you say, some local, some recruited in. That's exciting. So when will the music be? Tell us when it kicks off Friday, and kind of give us a
so Friday actually starts off for the general public at 6 p.m. And the Cricket Farmers will actually begin, I believe, at 5. So you can come a little early and get in line for those ride band sessions. But the fair will kick off at 6 on Friday. Our hand bid app for our auction, which we have some incredible auction items up for grabs this year, signed Saints football, a whole Shania Twain concert experience, some vacation stays, some really great prizes. All of that starts off on Friday, and then it runs through Sunday when we close the auction at 4 o'clock.
Great. And so if we'll be able to get a link to the handbid app here in the comments below this, maybe not live during the show, but certainly for people who view it a little later. But speaking of live and comments, Miss Debbie Giltner has chimed in with a little comment to let us know that she's watching. Debbie, of course, is known as Billy and Cody's mom. She's one of the sweetest ladies around, and just one of the coolest families. So just know that she's watching you, Leslie. Miss Debbie, thanks for chiming in. Folks, if you want to make a comment here, feel free to. And we have the ability during the live broadcast here to share that with Leslie. So if you have a question about the Strawberry Festival, where she served as a queen and a chairperson and for 10 years as a board member, or about the Spring Fair, which clearly she's heavily involved with now, the St. Joseph School, she's the president of the Home and School Association. She can tell you a ton about that, obviously, as a parent and long ago, or not quite as long ago as I, as a student. Anything that we covered today, feel free to chime in, or if you just want to say something nice and let her know that a friend is watching, like Miss Debbie's done, please do so. So we're here with Leslie Settoon. She is, as I mentioned, wearing many hats as a leader at St. Joseph and beyond. We talked about those kind of early years coming up through St. Joe. Do you have any fond memories about the school itself? Whether it be favorite teachers, classes, events, when someone says St. Joseph School and you think about your experience as a student, not a mom, what springs to mind first?
Miss Pearl Burner.
Oh yeah, the legendary religion teacher. What
so much of who I am is because of how she taught us religion, and what she emphasized was important in just overall good humans, not just Catholics, but just people in general. But I could list all of my teachers, I think probably successfully from first grade, because I actually joined in first grade all the way to 8th grade. It was just such a special school to be a part of. There was a lot of care that was brought to a very small space. I mean, at the time that I attended there was only one class per grade. And one memory in particular, and I think it was probably your class, your 8th grade class. We were the 3rd grade class when Miss Lisa Watkins was the 3rd grade teacher. Now, I remember a whole gaggle of guys hanging out in the doorway trying to get her attention. So,
I think every boy in school above 5th grade probably had a crush on her at the time, or maybe every boy in the school period. She was very popular. Speaking of popular, wow, your comments are coming in here. And one of my favorite people, I know one of your favorite people too here, chimed in, Miss Jeanette. Miss Jeanette, so thankful that you're watching. And she says you're such a hardworking, loving person. So
thank you, Miss Jeanette. She's always been such a supportive person.
What do they say, Leslie? It takes one to know one, because she's certainly all of that and much more. And keeping it in the family, Kristen says you're doing great, sis. Hashtag Supermom. So that's
I don't know about Supermom.
Thank you. And I like this next one because he's going to put you on the spot. Our friend Jeff Wright, who was on the show just a few weeks ago, says, who's your most favorite Strawberry Festival chairman?
That I served with.
Boy, Jeff, way to put her on the spot. All she can do is make one
Yeah,
person happy and about
right.
9 mad. Way to go.
You know what? I will choose the chairman the year that I was queen.
Very
Because
smart.
that was
Yeah.
still serving, and
Mhm.
Stanley Pelche
Oh,
was
yeah.
family to me, and
Absolutely.
he is still family to me. He and Susan
Yeah.
and his boys.
Yeah.
That's some of the best part of that, of being involved in organizations like the Strawberry Festival, is the
Yeah.
connections that you make for a lifetime.
Well, you're right, and but on both accounts, I see that through my own wife, a former queen, and all the people she loves on the board, from her late king, who she adored, to the chairperson and all that, and also about Mr. Stanley being such a great guy. The Pelche family has served this town in so many ways, from the fire department and beyond. But having come up through the school system with his oldest son, and seeing all those guys doing such great things, yeah, you're spot on there. Let me keep going through here, because the comments keep to coming in. I know we'll get more later. Lisa's enjoying this. Lisa, thank you. Jeff said it can't be yourself. So
Well, and let me just say, Jeff Wright knows he's one of my bestest, and my closest. It's hard to choose just one, so I
for sure,
definitely went
for
the easy
sure.
route.
There have been so many great chair people, and it's neat to see the evolution. I mean, I've been alive 46 years, and we're at Festival 51, with a little gap with COVID and whatnot. So, it's been around longer than you or I have lived. But we've known the people. Even when you look back to those early chair people, it's often people that we may be like. I think of Richard Stilley and his 3 kids were friends of mine. We grew up
Right.
together. Or John Vaughn, who's my cousin, or Tom Inman, who I saw at lunch today. So it's been this great cast of characters from the really old days, when it was this itsy bitsy startup, smaller than the Spring Fair probably is now, to this
Right.
mega thing that it is now. And if you would tell us a little bit about, we'll talk more about the Strawberry Festival later, and I want to ask you about your experience as queen and all the many things you've done. But distinctly right now, I want to ask about serving as chairperson, because I think probably the average person in Ponchatoula, everybody knows and loves the Strawberry Festival. We go, we ride rides, we eat food, we enjoy it. But it's been a shock to me over the years how few people kind of know basics of its organizations. For example, nonprofits on campus, for-profits and carny types off campus, etc. So they probably have next to no knowledge about how you become chairperson and what a commitment that is. Because you don't just stroll in for one weekend or even 1 year to be the chairperson. It's a multi-year commitment. So can you kind of speak to not only what your experience was like, but how someone might get there?
Right. So as far as my experience is concerned, you mentioned it earlier. I served as queen for the 2002 festival,
Mm-hmm.
and that was not my first introduction to the festival, but it certainly was my first introduction to that organization, and kind of what happens all year long to plan for the festival. They really make it a point to bring the queen into the fold, to really see the behind the curtain stuff, and what happens. And you just immediately, you can't help but develop a passion for what everyone is doing. Their passion is absolutely infectious. So I joined the board the following year as a royalty coordinator, which is an appointed position. And the Strawberry Festival board, is actually comprised of technically 3 groups of people. You have appointments, which are selected by the chairman and approved by the board. You have your board of
Mm-hmm.
directors, which is comprised of nonprofit organizations in the community.
Okay. So this would be like
Organizations
Rotary,
like
Kiwanis, JCs, places
Rotary,
like that.
Kiwanis, all of those types of
Okay.
civic organizations, some of which formulated the first festival.
Mm-hmm.
So they send in 2 delegates to vote on their behalf and in the best interest of the festival, and they're the ones driving those decisions. And then you have your executive board, which is your chairman-elect, secretary, treasurer, public relations, and immediate past chairman. And in order to be the chairman, I know in most recent years they've changed bylaws to actually require a years of service requirement, but you have to first run for chair-elect. And that
Right.
chair-elect position is basically your year of preparation leading into the 1 year following where you'll run the festival.
So that you can watch somebody do it from a close up, kind
Right.
of knowing that you're doing that next year. Yeah, that's a smart strategy.
Yeah, they're very big on policies and making sure that people understand what it is their job is, so that everybody who has a job does stay in their lane, does their thing, so that everything works exactly the way it should, like a fine-oiled machine.
Yeah, because it has to be to pull off this event where you bring hundreds of thousands of people in on a weekend to a little town. This population formally is maybe less than 10,000. And it's my understanding that all these positions you're talking about are volunteer, right?
Correct.
Nobody's getting paid to be the chairperson. So, because, every year, you see somebody, you can't help but walk around, people, you guys are prominent, they're dressed in a way you could tell who's on the board and who's not. And it seems like every year I see somebody out there just getting chewed out, cussed out, whatever. And I'm thinking, come on, man. Like, one, the complainer's probably wrong about whatever they're bitching and moaning about. But two, you're cursing a volunteer, get with it.
Yeah.
So, it's a pretty thankless job in many ways.
There's more good than there is bad. There is more good than there is bad. And that's why you see year after year, you have board members who have been on there 20 plus years, who just continue to give of themselves despite the little bit of bad you may encounter.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, swinging back to Miss Jeanette, she says she was the chairman in 1986.
Right, she would have been my favorite, but she wasn't.
Yeah, right, you didn't serve with her. You played at her festival
right.
as a little itsy bitsy, probably 3-year-old. But Miss Jeanette, I was probably 9 years old. Hopefully, it took me longer than most guys to be tall enough to ride the cool rides. But it's possible your festival was my favorite ever. I got to tell you, there's no way I was paying attention to who was running which festival at the time. But, if you were the one that had the Trabant, rolling with the Bon Jovi in the 80s, which you probably were, I definitely love that, Miss Jeanette. So thank you. And everybody else, I'll throw a few more comments here. Lisa's not down with the confetti eggs. Probably, anybody who has to wash their hair after that can get it. Somebody like me without much hair, it has less to gripe about there. He says, lots of good comments. Carly, you're right. That was a good save. Kristen says, though, confetti eggs are epic. So, but what a mess. Good point. Our friend Mandy Braywick, who's been on the show, says, hey. And I love this here. The woman that introduced me to my wife, one of your best friends in the world, says she promises not to ask you who your favorite queen is. And yeah, correct. Because who would want to see Emily, Bougier Hatfield fighting Emily Matisse, Emily McNeely Matisse? Yeah. We don't want to pit your best friends in the world against each other.
I do get to plead the fifth, yes.
So, looking back to childhood, you go from St. Joseph, where you mentioned what a strong, important part of your life this Catholic faith is. Clearly, that was the foundation that's serving you well to this day. What about that next chapter after St. Joe when you get to PHS? What was that like for you?
Shocking. I attended school with 32 kids for 8 years. The same 32 kids. We may lose one here or there, but for the most part, it was the same 32 kids, and we were family. And then we stepped through the doors of Ponchatoula High, and there was this freshman class of over 500 kids.
Right.
And they dressed, however they wanted, because prior to Columbine, we did get to wear free dress our freshman year. And so it was very shocking to know that I got to decide what I was going to wear, and I got to wear makeup to school. And there were people I had never laid eyes on. I lived in this community my whole life and never knew these people. And soon you kind of just get into the groove of things. And I was really grateful for that experience, because I don't know that I would be the same person had it not been for being kind of thrown in and said, okay, go meet people.
Yeah, I remember it being intimidating. We ended up graduating, I think, 24. It were twice as many boys as girls, so it's maybe 16 to 8. And you're right. You mentioned your family at that point. It's true. Those girls feel like your sister, They could be the best looking woman in the world, but you don't have any interest in dating them because it feels like, it's your sister. It's really a unique kind of situation. And PHS, not as big as it is today, but even then was huge. You're looking going into a group that's at least probably 10 times or more the size of your class. Most feeding probably from the junior high, some from Champ Cooper. Yeah, that's a wild experience. What events were you into? Did you have kind of favorite subjects, favorite clubs? You know, what I like to ask everybody who comes in the show about their PHS days because we're a one high school town. You know, in grade school, maybe you went to Tucker, maybe you went to St. Joe, maybe you went to Champ Cooper, but in high school, you know, at least back in the day, it was all PHS all the time. So, what do you remember fondly about Ponchatoula High School?
I was a big joiner. I think that it may have been a tip off to what things were going to be like into adulthood. I joined all of the clubs that I was able to. You know, there was a Face It Ministries club, and there was a Spanish club, and drama club, and key club, and I tried out for cheerleading my sophomore year and was a cheerleader for 3 years. I enjoyed taking part in the entire high school experience. Quite honestly, there wasn't a thing that I can't recall not enjoying.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about your family, okay? Because you mentioned earlier your parents, Daryl and Roxy, well liked, well known folks around here. Your sister chimed in. Tell us about what it was like growing up in that household and kind of how your parents supported you and helped you become the woman you are today.
You know, you don't do it alone. When
Right.
you grow up with a strong family unit, you have grandparents who are heavily present and involved as well. And I was really grateful to have that on both sides of my family. You know, looking back on it, it wasn't anything, you know, extraordinarily different than probably how most people are raised. My mom worked for an attorney for 28 years before she decided that she wanted to open her own business. And she would pick us up, and we did dance and gymnastics. And my dad worked in Baton Rouge and would drive home, you know, an hour. He'd get home about 6. He did math homework because mom was not touching that with a 10-foot pole. And, you know, we ate at the bar, and, you know, we weren't the family that always ate at the dining room table together. And I didn't know any different, and I was fine with it. I thought it was a great raising. I remember, and I always tell this story, I had a little bit of a shock when I went to my friend's house for the first time, and our entire family sat at the dining room table, and no one got up until they were excused. And I thought those were things that only happened in the movies. We were, I would say, probably a more traditional 80s, 90s family where the mom is working, and you know, the dad gets in later than the mom, and dinner is made, but the kids have already eaten and they're bathed. And I had a sweet home life for sure. They were very supportive parents.
So let me follow into, you know, and I know this is much later, but tell us about your love story, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier, marrying into the Settoon family. And the first thing that pops in my mind is, girl, you're brave. Because I grew up with some of those boys, and you know, look, that's a great family. I love them, but man, that is, you know, a different experience than growing up in a small family with a couple girls. So, you know, if you don't mind sharing, you know, how you and Brett came to be here, tell us a little about that, because I'm going to ask you a bit, and you know, about kind of how you're raising your kids now and how those values your parents, you know, kind of informed that and guided that, but first we got to figure out how you became, you know, your new nuclear family. So tell us about Brett and all. I know what a fun wedding y'all had. It was a blast. But how did we get there?
So Brett and I actually met at a local pub.
Nice.
And I knew his brother, and we met one night. We, you know, exchanged numbers, and the rest is really history. But they say you absolutely marry a man's family, or your partner's family,
You do,
and
sure.
the family is not intimidating at all because they are super welcoming, incredibly loving, and they love laughter. They love happiness. And so it's fun to be in an atmosphere where it's always a good time. Even in the hard times and even in the sad times, someone's going to find some humorous moment to lighten the room. And that's lovely to be around.
It is a joyous family for sure. When you think about it, I mean, whether, you know, as we were kids, from the ballpark to the Strawberry Festival to, you know, eventually Joel's DJ and everything.
Well, and they're really great with kids. For them to be a predominantly male family. So the majority of them who were raised by the four siblings were all men.
Yeah.
And Kayla. And when we had, before I had kids, but even after I had kids, they really give the kids attention.
Right.
And they spend time with the kids, and they validate the kids, and they teach the kids how to do the same thing for younger kids around them. And I'm starting to see that in my own son, that he spends time with younger kids rather than brushing them off. And
no, he absolutely does. And as I've alluded to earlier, the fact that he would sit at a table with 4 first graders and have lunch is a testament to how he mentors younger kids, even at that young age. That's impressive.
I contribute that 100% to the men in the Settoon family.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, they love you too, as you can see from this comment. They are some lucky to have you and glad to have you, and they know it. So you guys are now raising kids together, and you mentioned, and again, I've seen it, at least with the case of Davis, who I see at St. Joe, and he's a little older, so he's kind of more visible to me. Such a great kid, whether it's at the ballpark, whether it's at school, wherever. He's well mannered toward adults. He's nice to the other kids, as far as I can see. How are y'all doing that? What are the values you're looking to impart, and how do y'all go about that for folks, in case there's some young mom who's about to enter this journey and looks to you and says, "Hey, I know it's not all easy. I know there's no perfect formula. I know you're not perfect. Nobody's, but you're clearly succeeding and kicking butt in that." How? What if you had a secret sauce to share, what would it be?
I wish I did. The reality of it is that you just, today was a good day. Tomorrow he may disappoint and fall off, and then he'll have another chance the next day to make it right. And I don't have an answer for you, because we say that Davis was born to be a priest. It's my 4-year-old. When you see him in action, let me know if you think we're just as successful.
Right. Hey, no, I can relate. It's each kid's different. Bree and I were 2 years apart, and we roll. And part of it's seasons of life, right? It's like at one age, this kid's the priest, and at another age, the other one may.
Davis is very tender-hearted. He always has been. And we use that to our advantage. And we ask him, how would you feel? This wouldn't feel good. And then always just be kind. At every opportunity you have, just choose to be kind. Sadly, I can't say that's always been the case for me. So I'm trying to evolve him from who I was at certain points in my own life when I wish I could have done differently. But I don't have a secret. I'm sorry, guys.
But you have a hashtag now, Settoon Secret Sauce. I love it. Some other great comments coming in from folks I know that are best friends of yours. Speaking of great parents and great St. Joseph School legacies, Becky P.V. Smith just talks about how much she loves you, and you have this love for God and your family and our community here in Ponchatoula, as does Becky. Her grandfather is perhaps my favorite interview I've done yet in 100 plus. Just what a great man Reggie Peavy is, and
he's
to pass that down.
That's Davis's best friend.
Yeah. Oh, well, what a mentor and great best friend. And I don't even know how many kids and grandkids and because when we did the show, he had 3 on the way. It was a crazy amount already.
It's a lot.
But you mentioned earlier in parenting, you don't do it alone. I think we talk about your parents, but something to the point of it takes a village. And I think that's part of what makes Ponchatoula so special is folks like Becky and Mr. Reggie. And because you might be at Paul's Cafe and enter into your own conversation and have your own things going on. And there you got somebody kind of waiting in the gap to mentor your kid and guide them. And that's so special. What about other mentors in your life? We've asked kind of specifically about school and Strawberry Festival, et cetera. Are there other people in your life, maybe outside your family, that have had a big impact on you?
I don't think that there isn't someone you meet that you don't draw something from.
Right. Good point.
To have one specific person in mind, I would say no.
Yeah.
But
probably because there's so many, and it's hard. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you meet incredible people and you decide to keep them in your unit, you have an appreciation for them, but each of them are incredible in their own right. So I can attest to getting back into church to individuals like Becky and Christy Peavy and Anna for just a simple invite of saying, hey, come sit outside during COVID for church and, not missing a Sunday after that. Or I can, testify to people who've picked me up at my very lowest when I thought things were just crumbling and reminding me that every day you get to choose who you want to be. And, they're all amazing mentors and they don't even know it.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it. Circling back to some other great people in our community from kind of the good old days, Miss Jeanette's been kind enough to tell us about her king, Stanley Cowan. Of course, was a famous businessman and well-known person here in the community. Her queen was Susan Parker. I wonder if we were related, Miss Jeanette. I'm named Parker because that was my family name. My grandmother and her sister were the Parker sisters. And she's kind enough here to mention her buddy, my cousin, John Vaughn, the late, great John Vaughn, one of my favorite people ever. Like you, he chaired the festival long ago. And Miss Jeanette, I thank you for mentioning them. What I'd like to do, Leslie, and I know I promised you I'd get you home. You got those two kiddos and Brett needing you.
I gotta get back to the spring fair.
Well, that's probably it. They need to work. But
I have the village watching my kids right now. I gotta get back to the spring fair.
I want to recognize your professional success because we've been focusing a lot on your volunteer endeavors and your family and kind of your upbringing and your background. But you've been incredibly successful in business, okay? And you now own a successful Subway restaurant in Covington. Tell us a little bit about your professional career, because I'd love to hear about that.
So it's funny because you think you have your whole life laid out. And I was working for Homestead Bank. I was an internal auditor for the bank and really enjoying what I did. And my mom came to me and said, your father and I have decided to buy a Subway restaurant in Covington, and we need you to leave to come work for us. And kicking and screaming, I quit my job and went to go make sandwiches. And at, 19 years old, it was not what I had pictured for myself.
Sure.
And a year and a half in,
because that's hard work. I mean, even the owners are busting their butt in Subway. My friend Mike Williams and his wife Emily had stores in Hammond, and I remember well how hard they work as owners. So it's not always glamorous. Am I right?
No, we were putting out at that time in a very small store on Boston Street in Covington. We were cranking out 100 units, which is sandwiches at that time an hour. So we were really busting butt. And unfortunately, not always are we kind to the people who make our food. And that was really tough for me to experience that level of difference coming from banking and kind of being in a silo of auditing or happy homemaking with the mortgage industry to, working behind a sandwich unit where, it's tough. People are very passionate about sandwiches. So I actually applied to go work for the corporate office as a field consultant is what they called it at the time. And the way that Subway is structured, when Fred DeLuca decided to franchise out, he chose to do so with development agents. And what development agents were they were contracted to actually develop a territory. So the development agent that I went to work for had development rights for New Orleans and the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And he also had Baton Rouge and later expanded into Lafayette, Lake Charles, and Beaumont, Texas.
Wow, that's a lot of ground to cover. That sounds like the Janney King Gulf Coast almost.
It was a lot of ground to cover. It was.
You must have changed your tires on your car a lot.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story. I didn't know you had to change tires. I thought you just got to car. I learned a lot working in that time frame. So I worked as a fuel consultant. I soon knew that that's where I wanted to be. I had a passion for the brand, but my loyalties absolutely were I wanted to stay inside that brand and move my way up. So I did odds and ends. Hurricane Katrina hit shortly after I got hired. So that was kind of an upheaval of sorts. And I got to learn lots of parts of the business that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to, like the construction side and remodeling, because we had to remodel a lot of stores.
I bet.
And then years later moved into becoming assistant director of operations, later director of operations. And once my then boss decided to retire, we had the opportunity to buy the contract, which was never something that I would have imagined in a million years would happen. If you had asked me, I was just going to retire with that business and be director of operations, and then that was going to be it. And so that incredible opportunity came, and I was so blessed, and just timing just was kismet. Yeah. It was just right timing, right place. And we did that for since 2019. And we just sold our development company back to FWH in February.
Cool. Yeah.
It was time.
Well, congrats on that. But did you turn to your parents in that time to figure out, should you become an entrepreneur? Because it sounds to me like you were, kind of considered yourself an employee for life, possibly. And then you jump into the big chair and not only take on the big job, but take on all the risks that goes with buying something, right? I mean,
right. So when you spend your entire adulthood in the same place, it can be really scary to face upheaval and what am I going to do, and do I want to work, and I feel like I probably should do something. I did. I turned to my parents and I said, okay, I know you're ready to retire. They had sold 4 of their 5 restaurants that they had come to build over the years, and I said, I think that this may be my next chapter. I think that, ironically, the thing that I couldn't get away from fast enough, and you drug me into it, has probably become where I will end my story for my work life. And it's special. I'm happy to have it every day. I enjoy getting to serve the people of Covington. I do look forward to possible expansion. But if I only ever have this one, I am completely content, and I'm home to pick up my kids in the afternoon, which is what, my American dream was.
Yeah, right.
My mom had to work a 9 to 5. And so she wasn't able to always pick us up or always volunteer like I'm able to do. And I know that this is probably coming around to what you had asked me earlier. Owning my own business was part of owning the future that I wanted for my family.
Yeah. That's a great point. My mom, like yours, was a legal secretary for many years. She worked in Baton Rouge, and this was before I was born. But she talks often about, how rigid that schedule can be, and just the lack of autonomy. And if you work, even if you're working for a great guy, or back then they were all guys, but now, guy or gal, still can be tough. So, there's an whole separate set of headaches and problems that come with business ownership. But you're right. If you want to be the person to pick up carpool, you got a better shot there. So that's really neat. Got a few more comments coming in here I want to share. My old buddy Kevin Rayford, his wife Karen, who you know well, dear friends. They're thanking you for all your hard work with the SJS Fair. Let me echo that as a parent with a kid at St. Joseph, and I'm not able to be on that front line helping like you are with my schedule. Not yet. Right. Not this year. But thank you so much that, you're doing such great work. Another buddy here, Wesley Daniels. Wesley, Spring Fair, man, what kind of memories do we have staying at your house, my house? We did it together, man, for 9 years over there or whatever. That's something cool. Well, look, I promise I'll get you out of here on time. We're about there. Is there anything I haven't asked you about? Anything on your mind, on your heart, just anything at all that you'd like to share with our viewers before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. I'm so incredible. I'm blown away at the interest in me in general. I told my husband, I was like, all of a sudden, I don't know why I'm considered interesting, but I do thank you for your time to allow me to talk about the Spring Fair and the importance of getting your kids out this weekend in the breaks when we have some sunshine, to go let them go be kids. It's not a great world anymore, but there are great moments, and the St. Joseph Fair promises to be one of them. So we definitely hope you come and enjoy a really safe and enjoyable time, family and wholesome fun.
That's a great point. It's very wholesome in a world that is so, less so than ever. The safety, there's so many great, and I look at the St. Joseph dads that are there, and it's not just the dads, the moms are clearly too, but I'm just thinking from a place I feel comfortable dropping my kid off and knowing that, like, if something goes down, I know those dudes and they're going to
Right.
handle up and keep that community, those kiddos, my wife, whoever it may be, safe. It's a wonderful event, and like we've said so much throughout this, it's a lot of fun. So I do disagree with you, Leslie. You've always been interesting. I want to refer people to the Tangi Lifestyles. I think most recent episode where they had your 5 favorite things, but we
Yes.
didn't even have time to get into her love of music or her back porch or the cool things that are mentioned there. So there's much more to delve into with this wonderful woman. So thank you for your time. And I'll just close with this final comment that I agree with wholeheartedly. Great job. Be proud of your accomplishments. This has been a heck of an interview, and we've just scratched the surface with one of the most interesting women in town. So to our viewers, we will see you next week. To our guest, Leslie, thank you so much. And I said I'd close with the other comment, but when Mom jumps on to let you know, great job, we got to go there. Miss Roxy, I always love to talk to you. Good to see you. Y'all have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you here next week.
Thank you.
Take
See you
care.